Today we begin at the very beginning, or at least the beginning of what we in the Western world call philosophy. We begin with a man who wrote nothing, owned nothing, and yet changed everything. We begin with Socrates. Born in Athens around 470 BCE, Socrates was the son of a stonemason and a midwife. He grew up during the golden age of Athens, a time of democracy, art, tragedy, and intellectual flourishing. He served as a soldier, fighting in several battles with courage. But his true battlefield was not the fields of war. It was the marketplace, the agora, the street corners of Athens, where he would stop anyone, a politician, a craftsman, a poet, and ask them a deceptively simple question: what do you know? What made Socrates different was not that he had all the answers, it was that he knew he didn't. And more importantly, he suspected that most people who claimed to have answers didn't really have them either. This is what the Oracle of Delphi famously confirmed when a friend asked whether anyone was wiser than Socrates. The oracle said, no one. Socrates was puzzled. He didn't feel wise, so he went to test it, speaking to politicians, poets, and craftsmen, all of whom claimed expertise, and every time he found the same thing. They thought they knew, but when pressed, their knowledge crumbled. The difference between them and Socrates knew that he didn't know, and that he concluded was his wisdom. This is the birth of what we call the Socratic Method, a form of inquiry through dialogue. You ask a question, you receive an answer, then you probe that answer with another question, and another, until the original answer either holds up under pressure or collapses under its own contradictions. It's not about winning an argument, it's about seeking truth together through honest examination. Imagine you're walking through the agora of Athens, and Socrates approaches you. He asks, is courage a virtue? You say, yes, of course. He asks, what is courage? You say perhaps that courage is facing danger without fear. He nods and then asks, is a soldier who charges into battle without fear of death necessarily courageous? Or could he simply be reckless? You hesitate. He continues, and what about a man who fears death deeply but still charges into battle to protect his family? Is he not more courageous precisely because he felt the fear and acted anyway? You're not so sure anymore. That discomfort, that productive uncertainty, is exactly what Socrates was after. He called this process midwifery. His mother delivered babies. He delivered ideas, helping people give birth to thoughts that were already inside them, latent, waiting to be examined. Philosophy for Socrates was not a lecture, it was a conversation. But this made him enemies. Powerful people do not like to be shown publicly that they don't know what they claim to know. Politicians found him threatening. Religious figures found him impious. The young men of Athens found him fascinating and followed him everywhere, learning, questioning, challenging the status quo. In 399 BCE, Socrates was put on trial. The charges: impiety, failing to acknowledge the gods of the city, and corrupting the youth of Athens. He was 70 years old. The jury of 500 Athenian citizens voted to condemn him. He could have escaped. His friends offered to help him flee, but Socrates refused. To flee, he argued, would be to act unjustly, to disrespect the laws of the city that had raised him. And more than that, to stop philosophizing would be to stop living in any meaningful sense. He said something that has echoed through centuries: the unexamined life is not worth living. Think about that. Not the unsuccessful life, not the unambitious life, the unexamined life. Socrates believed that the greatest danger was not poverty or pain or even death, but living on autopilot, never questioning your assumptions, never asking why you believe what you believe, why you do, what truly matters. He drank the hemlock. He died calmly, surrounded by friends and students, still talking, still questioning, still teaching. His last words, according to Plato, concerned a debt to the god of medicine, a final ironic joke, or perhaps a final gesture of piety toward life itself. Socrates left no writings. Everything we know about him comes from his students, primarily Plato, but also Xenophon and Aristophanes. This creates what scholars call the Socratic problem. We can never be entirely sure where Socrates ends and where Plato begins. The figure in Plato's dialogues may be as much a character as a historical person. But the ideas endure. The Socratic method is still used in law schools, in medicine, in therapy, in classrooms around the world. The idea that self-knowledge is the foundation of all wisdom, know thyself, remains as radical and urgent as it was 2,400 years ago. Socrates did not just ask philosophical questions. He insisted that philosophy is not a discipline for the few, not a luxury of idle minds. It is a moral necessity. To live well, to live justly, you must think, you must examine, you must be willing to be wrong and to change. But Socrates was not only interested in exposing ignorance, he believed that philosophy had a practical purpose, helping us live better lives. For Socrates, virtue was a form of knowledge. People do wrong not because they knowingly choose evil, but because they fail to understand what is truly good. This is why he urged people to care for their souls more than wealth, status, or power. The real task of philosophy was not simply to win arguments, but to become wiser, more just, and more fully human. The gadfly, his enemies called him. The gadfly of Athens, a small, annoying insect that stings the great horse of the state just enough to keep it from falling asleep. And perhaps that is the best summary of what philosophy does. It stings, it irritates, it wakes us up. We will never know exactly what Socrates sounded like in the agora, how he smiled when a student finally understood something, or how he faced his final moments. But we know this: he chose thought over comfort, truth over safety, questioning over certainty. And in doing so, he gave the world something far more lasting than any building or battle, a method of living with one's eyes open. Thank you for watching PhiloByts. Next time, we'll follow one of Socrates' greatest students into a world of perfect forms and ideal cities. We'll explore the mind of Plato. Until then, ask questions. Don't stop asking questions.